The wind cut through the canyon like a sharpened blade, carrying two smells a man never forgot: snow and blood. Cole Mercer pulled his collar higher, the sheepskin lining of his coat doing little against cold that felt determined to crawl into bone. His mare, Bess, stood tense beneath him, steam rolling from her nostrils as her ears twitched toward the ravine below. Cole didn't have to see the wreck to know trouble lived down there. Out here, silence had rules. It belonged to the mountains, the trees, the hawks. When silence felt bruised, when it felt interrupted, it meant something had happened that the land hadn't agreed to. He guided Bess down the scree slope, stones clicking beneath iron shoes. His eyes scanned the tree line, the ridges, the shadowed cuts between boulders. Old habits, survival habits. Then the ravine opened up, and the world split. A wagon lay smashed against the granite like it had been thrown by a giant. Canvas torn into ribbons, a broken axle pointing up like a snapped rib, and bodies, half covered in drifting white, scattered the way men fell when there wasn't enough time to pray. Cole swung down, boots crunching loud in the dead quiet. His hand hovered near the Navy Colt at his hip. He moved from one shape to the next, checking for breath he already knew would be missing. Faces frozen in expressions of surprise, hands stiff around broken reins. A guard with a rifle still tucked under his arm, like he thought he could hold the line even in death. This wasn't a robbery. This was an execution. Cole straightened, eyes narrowing. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Quick, clean, brutal. He was about to leave, about to let the dead belong to the mountain, when a flash of color punched through all that gray and white like a wound in the world. Crimson. Deep, rich, impossible crimson. Cole moved fast, stepping around a broken wheel. There, beneath the overturned wagon bed, sheltered slightly by the snapped axle, lay a woman. She wasn't dressed like anyone who belonged in these territories. Not a settler, not a saloon girl, not a ranch wife. She wore a gown of red silk embroidered with gold threads so fine it looked like sunlight trapped in fabric. Birds stitched into the hem, flowers climbing the sleeve, a design too elegant for this savage place. Her skin was pale, too pale. Cole dropped to one knee and pulled off his glove, pressing two fingers to her neck. Cold like ice. But underneath, barely there, was a faint flutter, a pulse. She was alive. Cole didn't waste a second. He stripped off his heavy coat and wrapped her up, pulling her against the warmth of his chest. She was light, terrifyingly light, like a person who'd already started leaving the world. Her black hair spilled over his forearm like ink. "Easy," he murmured, voice rough from disuse. "I've got you." It was a promise made to the storm as much as to her. He mounted Bess with the woman cradled across the saddlebow and urged the mare into a hard trot. The sky was bruising purple. A storm was moving in, and Cole had miles to go before timberline. The ride back was a fight. Wind howled through the pines. Snow began to fall sideways. Cole kept one arm clamped around the woman, feeling how still she was. She didn't shiver. That scared him more than blood. Shivering meant the body was fighting. No shivering meant the cold had gone deep. His cabin finally emerged through the storm. Hand-hewn logs tucked into a grove of lodgepole pine. A place built by one man, for one man. He didn't stable Bess, just got her into the lee of the barn with a muttered promise of oats later. He kicked the cabin door open and carried the woman inside. Dark, warmth trapped in old wood, the smell of smoke and dried sage. He laid her down on the bear rug by the hearth and fed the fire until flames snapped to life, filling the room with orange movement. Now in the firelight, the woman looked even more unreal. Silk, gold embroidery, soft lips, a bruise on her temple like someone had tried to knock the royalty out of her. Cole moved with careful urgency. He removed her soaked embroidered slippers. Her toes were white, waxy. He rubbed her feet briskly, watching for pain. Nothing.
He dampened cloth in warm water and cleaned the grime from her face. She was beautiful in a way that didn't belong to this land. And then his eyes found something in the torn silk near her collar, something stitched in the inner lining. A symbol. Not a brand, not a family crest like ranch folk used. This was something older, something that looked like a crown wrapped in crescent shapes. Cole's jaw tightened. Whoever she wasn't just a woman. She was important. And important people didn't cross mountain passes in winter unless they were running from something worse than cold. He stayed up all night feeding the fire, listening to the wind, watching her breathe shallowly, and wondering what kind of men slaughtered an entire wagon just to make sure one girl didn't live. Near dawn, a sound broke the stillness. A sharp inhale. Cole looked up. Her eyes were open, dark, terrified, wild. She scrambled backwards, clutching the blanket to her chin, and words spilled from her mouth in a language Cole didn't understand. He raised both hands slowly. "Easy," he said low, the way he'd calm a spooked horse. "You're safe here." She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Cole poured broth into a tin cup and slid it across the floor to her like an offering. "Eat," he said, miming. She watched him for a long time, then crawled forward, took the cup with shaking hands, and drank like life depended on it, because it did. When she finished, she swallowed hard and whispered in heavy, careful English, "Thank you." Cole nodded once. "Cole," he said, tapping his chest. She hesitated, like names had prices. Then she answered softly, "Safia." Cole repeated it slowly. Sa-fi-ah. Outside, the storm tightened its grip. Inside, two strangers sat in firelight, bound by survival, and by the fact that whatever hunted her would eventually come looking.
Days passed in small measurements. The storm sealed the world shut. Snow rose against the cabin walls like it wanted to bury them alive. Safia barely moved for 2 days, sleeping, waking, drinking broth, staring into fire like she was replaying death behind her eyes. Cole kept his routines, chopping wood, checking traps, tending Bess, but nothing felt routine anymore. His cabin, once built for solitude, now held a presence that changed the air. He started moving quieter, closing doors gently, putting his gun belt farther from view, because fear lived in Safia's shoulders, and Cole could tell she'd been taught to recognize predators. On the 3rd day, her fever broke. Cole came in and found her sitting up, staring at her crimson gown draped over the chair. She touched the torn silk like it was skin, like it was memory. Then she mimed sewing. Cole retrieved his repair tin, heavy needles, thick thread, tools made for leather and canvas, not silk. He handed it over, feeling strangely embarrassed by how rough his world was. Safia examined the needle like it was a weapon. Then she nodded once and began. She unwrapped strands of thick thread, thinning them with her nails and teeth. Her hands were graceful but stubborn, determined. Cole watched from the table, oiling his rifle, and realized she wasn't just mending a dress, she was mending identity. When the storm finally softened, Safia wore the gown again, even with the black scar of thread in the red silk. She refused to be pitied. She refused to be broken. And in a strange way, that stubbornness looked familiar to Cole, because Cole Mercer didn't know much about palaces, but he knew something about refusing to die. One night, while Cole whittled a new axe handle, Safia brought him stew, not his usual plain meat and salt. She'd added dried herbs, made it richer, deeper.
"You have strong hands," she said carefully, pointing to his carving. Cole looked down at his scarred knuckles. "They work," he answered. Sophia sat straight across from him, firelight catching the gold embroidery on her gown. For a moment, the dragon-like design in the stitching looked alive. Cole hesitated, then stepped into dangerous territory. "The men in the wagon," he said softly. "They weren't just drivers." Sophia's gaze dropped to her hands. "No," she whispered. "Guardians." Her voice cracked on the word like it carried a funeral. "They die for me." Cole felt the weight of it settle into his chest. He hadn't rescued a traveler. He'd rescued the reason people died. He leaned back, eyes hard. "The snow covers tracks. No one finds this place until thaw." Sophia studied him like she was trying to detect betrayal. Then she exhaled, long, trembling. "Until thaw," she repeated. "A reprieve, not a solution." Weeks passed. Sophia grew stronger, stepping outside wrapped in Cole's spare coat, the red hem visible like a hidden flame against snow. She watched him work, studied his tools, his habits. Then, one night, she drew symbols, poetry, on the back of an old ledger with charcoal. Cole watched her hand move. "What is it?" he asked. "A poem," she said, "from home." She swallowed. "The mountain does not bow to the wind." Cole's eyes lifted. Sophia looked into the fire, voice quieter. "My father, he is powerful. He promised me to a general, a man who conquers." Her hand tightened until the charcoal snapped. "I did not wish to be conquered." Cole didn't fully understand her world, but he understood ownership. He reached across the table and covered her soot-stained fingers with his rough palm. "You aren't property," he said low. "Not here." Sophia didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand and interlaced his with hers. A pact, a dangerous one. Because when thaw came, men like generals didn't forget what they believed belonged to them.
Fall spring arrived like a liar. Sun warm at noon, ice deadly at dusk. Cole was breaking ice in the trough when Bess pinned her ears and snorted low. Cole's hand dropped to his Colt. He scanned the tree line. A rider emerged, black horse, careful steps, posture too polished for frontier life. The man wore a gray duster and a flat-brimmed hat that shaded his eyes. He moved like paid violence, like a professional. The rider stopped 10 yards out. "Afternoon," the stranger said, voice smooth, southern lilt, polite. "You're a hard man to find." Cole didn't smile. "I'm not lost." The man chuckled dryly. "No, but something else is." His gaze flicked toward the chimney smoke. "I'm looking for a wagon and a passenger, a young woman, unusual finery." Cole held his gaze. He chose truth mixed with lie. "Found a wagon in the ravine weeks back," he said. "Smashed. Wolves had been at it. Didn't see any woman." The stranger's smile stayed, but his eyes hardened. "Wolves are thorough," he murmured, "but they usually leave bones." He straightened. "Name's Graves." Cole's stomach tightened. That name belonged to trouble. Graves tipped his hat. "I'll be camped down by the creek," he said. "If you remember anything, there's a reward, enough gold to buy this whole mountain." Then he rode off into the timber like he already knew the ending. Cole stood frozen, watching the trees swallow him. He knew Graves didn't buy the lie. Graves was testing angles, waiting. Cole bolted the cabin door behind him. Sophia stood in shadow, clutching a small knife, knuckles white. "He knows," Sophia whispered. "I can go. If I go, he leaves you."
Cole stepped close, hands on her shoulders. "No," he said. "We hold the door." Night fell like a hammer. Cole killed the lantern. Only embers glowed. He positioned the Winchester at the window. Sophia crouched below the sill. Hours crawled. Wind whistled through the log seams. Then glass shattered. Not a bullet. Fire. A kerosene rag wrapped around stone. It landed on the bed, flames licking fast. Sophia lunged, threw the heavy rug over it, stomped with desperate strength. At the same moment, the front door slammed under a massive impact. Graves wasn't waiting anymore. Cole fired through the wood, a shout outside. Return shots splintered the frame. Cole racked the lever, yelling, "Back!" But the back door stayed quiet. That meant Graves was alone, or confident. The lock shattered. The door burst open. Graves stood in moonlight, revolver in each hand, face calm like he'd done this 100 times. Cole dropped to one knee and fired upward. The bullet hit Graves in the chest. Graves stumbled backward into snow, shock replacing arrogance. The world went silent. Cole moved outside, rifle trained. Graves lay on his back, breath bubbling wet. He looked up at Cole with profound surprise. He died without a final word, just gone. Sophia stepped out behind Cole, shivering, staring down at the dead hunter. She didn't scream. She didn't look away. She looked at Cole and nodded, a seal on their shared fate. They buried Graves beyond the tree line, no marker except stones. When they returned, Sophia opened her trunk and stared at her crimson gown. Then she folded it, turned it inside out, and buried it at the bottom. "It is too loud for this life," she whispered. She pulled on Cole's flannel shirt instead, rolled sleeves, lifted her chin. "I am Sophia, and I stay." Cole stared at her, heart hitting his ribs like a fist, because he knew killing Graves wasn't the end. Men like Graves were never the top of the chain. They were the teeth, and something bigger had just been alerted.
Spring came hard and fast. Snow retreated, valleys turned green, the creek roared with meltwater. Cole and Sophia worked the lower fence line in rhythm, Cole lifting rails, Sophia lashing wire with gloved hands. It wasn't romantic, it was real. It was building something that could stand. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. But peace never lasts long in a world built on taking. 3 weeks after Graves died, a rider appeared at the edge of the property. Not one man, 5. And they didn't ride like drifters. They rode like authority. At their front was a man in a dark coat, posture straight as law. He carried a letter in one hand and a rifle in the other. Cole felt Sophia's body go still beside him. Her breathing changed. Fear, controlled, but sharp. Cole stepped forward alone. The leader stopped and called out, "Cole Mercer?" Cole didn't answer at first. He waited, measured. Then, "That's me." The man held up the letter. "I have a message," he said, "for the woman you're hiding." Sophia's fingers tightened on the fence wire. Cole's voice went low. "You don't know what you're talking about." The man smiled without warmth. "We know exactly what we're talking about." He slid the letter into his coat, then spoke the words that made the air feel colder than winter. "Princess Sophia al-Rashid." Silence hit like thunder. Cole heard Bess shift behind them. He heard the creak. He heard his own heartbeat. Sophia stepped out from behind Cole, slow, composed. Her chin lifted. Her eyes were calm now. Not fear, steel. The man dipped his head slightly. Respect or performance. "Your father's envoys," he said. "Your marriage contract remains. The general awaits. Your escape has embarrassed powerful men." Sophia's voice came out quiet. "I am not going." The man sighed like she was a child refusing medicine. "You don't get to decide, not in your world." Cole's jaw clenched. "She's in my world now," Cole said. The man's gaze slid to Cole like a blade.
And who are you to challenge empires, cowboy? Cole looked at Sophia, then he looked back. I'm the man who buried your hunter, he said evenly. That made the envoys shift. Hands moved closer to guns. The leader's expression tightened. So it was you. Cole didn't deny it. He stepped slightly in front of Sophia, subtle, protective, final. The leader spoke again, softer. We can do this easy, or we can do this hard. Cole answered, try hard. The first shot didn't come from Cole. It came from Sophia. Because while the men were watching Cole, Sophia had already lifted the rifle she'd learned to fire in secret. The crack echoed across the valley. The leader's horse screamed and dropped. Chaos erupted. Cole moved like winter itself, fast, violent, precise. He fired twice. One man fell. Another fled behind a tree. Sophia reloaded with shaking hands but steady will. The fight didn't last long, not because Cole was stronger, but because they weren't expecting the princess to fight back. 2 men escaped, 3 didn't. The valley went quiet again. Cole stood breathing hard, smoke rising from his barrel. Sophia stared at the fallen horse, at the blood on grass. Her hands trembled, not from weakness, from the cost. She turned to Cole, voice breaking. They will not stop. Cole nodded once. I know. Sophia swallowed. If I stay, you die. Cole stepped closer. If you leave, I go back to being dead inside. Sophia's eyes filled, but she didn't let tears fall. You don't understand, she whispered. My father will burn this land to get me back. Cole's voice lowered. Then we don't stay here. Sophia blinked. Cole looked towards the mountains. I know routes. Old passes, places maps don't show. We ride west, we disappear. Sophia stared at him, stunned. You would leave everything? Cole's mouth twitched, half a smile, half pain. He had everything, and it was empty. Sophia stepped forward until her forehead rested against his chest. For a long moment she let herself be small. Then she whispered, I was born in a palace, and I have never been this safe. Cole's arms wrapped around her, not gentle like a storybook, strong like a vow. They buried the dead, burned the bloodied grass, and that night, Sophia did something Cole never expected. She opened her trunk, pulled out the crimson gown, held it up to firelight. Then slowly she cut it, not in anger, in release. She used the silk to wrap supplies, to bind tools, to make bandages, turning royalty into survival. At dawn, they saddled Bess, packed food, water, a rifle, a knife, and one small bundle of silk and gold thread, now just fabric. Sophia stepped outside and looked back at the cabin, the place that had kept her alive. Cole waited beside the horse. Sophia walked to him, and for the first time she spoke like a princess, not in pride, but in truth. My father taught me to obey. This land taught me to live. Cole nodded. Then let's live. They rode out as the sun climbed, 2 solitary lives stitched together by winter. And somewhere behind them, across distance and power and blood, an empire was waking up to the fact that its property had learned to fight. And she wasn't alone anymore.